evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this talk on the UCAS application cycle and also some personal statement advice. So we're hoping to get you fast track through the application process to essentially make sure that you manage to get your application in by the deadline. So the deadline is coming up very soon, and if you are at school or college, you will find that you might be getting some pressure from your teachers, perhaps to get that in this week. It is important to get it in as soon as possible. You probably need to get a reference as part of your application. So time is ticking. We need to get it done. So if you're feeling like you just need that extra bit of support and just to follow up even what happens during the once you submit your application, that's what we're here for today. So hopefully you are ready to watch the stream, ready as we are as well. It's our live stream of the year, last one of the year. So we'll try and bring some useful tips. Don't look too excited, Ben. We'll get you on Christmas Day hosting a talk about UCAS application. Yeah, I'm sure lots of people will log in for that one. So, any questions that you have, do pop them in the comments. We would love to have you involved, asking us questions, making sure that we do tailor it towards what you want to know and how we can help you best as well. So we're going to go over kind of the UCAS application timeline. We're going to go over, how can you help your personal statement stand out, and then what happens once you actually send off your application. What can you expect from universities? So I'll pass you over to my colleagues. So I'm Faye, hosting tonight's stream, but I'm going to be asking my lovely colleagues, Dal and Ben, to provide me with lots of useful information. So let's quiz them tonight. Let's make them work. You want to introduce yourselves?
You go first, Dal.
I was waiting for you, Ben. So yeah, so as Faye said, I work in the same team as Faye and Ben, and we're just really here generally to give you some advice, as Faye was saying. So you might be in a position where university hasn't been on your horizon, and with everything that's gone on this year, your plans might be a bit all over the place. And we just wanted to say it's not too late to apply. So if you've noticed all your friends have gone off and made applications, but you're in a position where you haven't even had a look at UCAS, please do not be worried, because hopefully me and Ben, hopefully with a bit of help from Faye, we'll be able to shed some light on the application process and provide you guys with some useful tips. But as Faye said, please do interact with us. If you do have any questions, please use the chat facility on our website to get those questions coming through.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Ben, can you explain what's going on with your Christmas tree, because it's slightly upsetting?
Yeah, so my partner, because we both work in the same office, so that's why it looks a bit messy behind me at the minute, but she decided to put up a Christmas tree, and then half the lights don't work, and I've got a sneaking suspicion that I think the cat chewed through a wire. So yeah, not good times. So half the lights don't work, so it is looking a little bit sad at the minute. I might have to put some more lights on it later.
But it makes you feel any better? It probably doesn't. It's just not going too well this year. My real Christmas tree died within 5 days, so I must have gotten a dud this year.
Oh,
so
no.
Yeah, that was fun, taking off all the baubles and having to get it outside with all the needles falling off everywhere, and then having to get out the old plastic, safe, the one handy one in the back. Up in the loft, and then having to put all the lights back on and all the baubles. So yes, that was my fun weekend of getting rid of the dead Christmas tree. And I swear it wasn't me. I'm good at looking after things, so definitely a dud this year. But on to UCAS. Nobody needs to know about my dead Christmas tree. So Dal, are you okay to tell us a little bit about what UCAS is? Like what tell us about it.
Yeah, sure. So UCAS actually stands for Universities and College Admission Service, and it's the central hub for all undergraduate applications. So if you're a student right now that has done no research and you haven't looked into UCAS at all, my first bit of advice to you would be have a look at the UCAS website, because there's tons of information on there. So say, for example, if you're interested in a specific course, or if you're interested in a specific university, you can utilize the UCAS website as like a Google search system. And basically you can have a look at all the different courses that are on there. But a bit of watch out. There is over 50,000 courses on there at over 250 institutions in the UK. So it does kind of make your decision in terms of only choosing 5 a little bit more tricky. So to start with initially, you can start by researching terms that are fairly broad to the field that you want to go into, but then you are going to need to do some refinements to try and filter out the ones and try and hopefully narrow down to ones that you are looking to apply for. All of the application process is done through UCAS's website. So you'll hear us throughout this live stream keep referring to UCAS, and you'll fill your application out online, and it's done on the UCAS website.
Brilliant. So yeah, that is UCAS in a nutshell. So if you are a UK student or an EU student, UCAS is your best friend. As Dal said, you can't make an application without going through UCAS. Ben, are you okay to take us through a timeline, a bit of a snapshot of what students should expect? We probably have started the timeline ever so slightly, but we'll take you through kind of what to expect over the next 9 months, 8 months-ish.
Yeah, there we go. So we have got this timeline just here. And as you say, as Faye's just mentioned, we have already skipped past the first, maybe first 3 steps actually on this timeline. So hopefully students would have done a little bit of research. Obviously, if you've not actually even started your application, but maybe you've used the last month to start looking into universities, maybe you've not even done that yet. So really that first part of any timeline, regardless of what the date is make sure you do some research. And as Dow has just said, there's lots and lots of research, lots of information on the UCAS website that you can use to kind of get through that research, search for courses, search for universities, and really kind of make a start on making that sort of big decision. We'll jump straight up to the sort of UCAS deadline. And the reason why I want to mention this, because it is taking place just after Christmas, January 15th, is because that is the deadline set by UCAS, and they look at that as a sort of reasonably fair assessment on students that apply before that January deadline. However, and this is really important for those of you that are maybe late in the application stages, is that universities will still accept applications after January 15th. However, the sort of caveat to that is they may not necessarily look at them as fairly. That's the sort of line that UCAS will say. But also you might find that courses that are really competitive, have only got a small number of spaces, they may already be full up at that stage. So if you are looking to give yourself the best possible chance to get onto a university course, we always advise that students should apply before the 15th of January. So that's why that is on the timeline just there. And the other reason why we put a step before that about the internal deadline is that if you are at school or college, very often there'll be an internal deadline for the school or college to get the application in, because your tutors, your teachers, they'll need time to add on sort of predicted grades. They need time to add on a teacher's reference, just sort of back up your application. And that's, again, normally before Christmas, and it's just ahead of that January deadline. So that's just something to be aware of. From there, obviously, the March deadline isn't for yourselves. That's really for universities to get back to you. So from those 5 choices you've made on your UCAS application, hopefully you should receive all of your offers back from universities sometime in March. You've then got until May, usually start of June, to make those final decisions on what your firm choice is going to be and your insurance choice. The other 3 options that I just mentioned are then discarded. Your firm choice is the one that you really want to go to, and then your insurance choice is your backup. So that's what happens if you don't quite meet the criteria for your firm choice, you automatically get bopped down into your insurance. And then obviously comes results day. So that's when you know whether you've met the conditions of what you need to get into your university offer. And then hopefully come September, you will start university. So that is a real quick look at some of the key deadlines within the UCAS timeline. One final thing that I am going to mention that I actually think we need to put on this timeline at some stage in the near future is student finance opens in February. And it's very, very important you actually get student finance in ASAP. Even if you are applying later and you're not going to apply until sort of January, Feb, March time, as soon as you've been made your application and as soon as you start to receive offers, do try and make sure you get your student finance in ASAP.
Perfect. Now, with student finance as well, it doesn't open until usually the end of February, but you can already go on to, Student Finance England. You can click to receive updates from them, so they'll actually let you know when it's open and ready to make an application. So that's perfect. So I like little reminders. I like these little prompts to make sure that I do get it done on time. But yes, we should definitely get that in there. And probably something that we just should quickly touch upon as well is the actual application process. So some people might not have started yet, and that's absolutely fine. Yes, it opens in September, but it's still okay to make an account with UCAS. If you do want to make an account to submit an application, the link is below, so www.ucas.com/apply. So that's where you can make an account, and you can go on it, you can log back out, so you don't have to do your application all in one part. Make sure you keep your username and your password safe, and if you are applying through your school or your college, you will need a buzzword from them unless you're applying independently. So make sure to ask your tutor what that buzzword is, or the careers advisor at your school or college. You can make up to 5 choices on the application, but you absolutely don't have to. It's completely up to you. So you've got them there to use. There is a different charge depending on what you want to do as part of your application. So if you're just sending one application for one choice, it's £20. But if you want to make up to 5 choices, it's £26. So for an extra £6, you might find it's worth it to be able to add more choices. And within that actual process itself, there's 6 key sections. So your personal details, so your name, your email address, all that kind of thing, your nationality. Not all of those are compulsory, and you can also put a nominated contact here as well. So if you want somebody to be able to speak on your behalf, for example, to universities or to UCAS, you can nominate someone there. You'll pop in your university choices, so your 5 choices, and they do not have to be in order of preference. It's completely anonymous. I think it might go on alphabetically. You put in your academic qualifications, even if you haven't finished them yet. Employment history, you can leave it blank if you want to, so that's just optional. You'll have your reference, so usually a tutor if you're at school, a former tutor maybe if you've recently finished school or college, or perhaps an employer if you are working, and then you have your personal statement. So that's the 6 key sections. And again, that is quite a lot of information to get on there. You might not have everything to hand, so you can log in and log back out and log back in again. That's not a problem. So I think probably the thing that stops people from submitting their actual application and kind of is probably the hardest part to fill in would be the personal statement. Dal, can you fill us a little bit in about personal statements, please, and kind of what students should pop in there, really?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, you can only write one personal statement. So it's very, very important when you're making your choices. So as Faye just said there, you're allowed up to 5 choices. So when you're making your choices, please, wherever possible, can those 5 choices sit within the same field? Because when you are writing your statement, one thing that you must be able to put across is that you are passionate and knowledgeable about your field. And it's going to be very difficult to write about different courses if they're not within the same field. So if I was to give you an example, please do not be thinking applying to business and also midwifery, because it would be very, very difficult for you then to draw similarities between the 2 courses, and more importantly, justify how your previous education, such as your A-levels or your BTEC, has led you up to choosing those 2 courses, because they sit so differently in terms of the academic fields. So this personal statement document is sent to all your universities. Now, the universities cannot see what other university or course you've applied for. We can only see that you've applied for our university and our course, okay? So one thing that I strongly recommend here is please make sure that you are being completely anonymous and you are not name dropping specific universities or specific courses. You might turn around and really like our business and accounting course, but we strongly recommend that you do not write DMU business and accounting course is fantastic. They offer X, Y, and Z, and they're going to give me so many wonderful placements, because other universities are going to read that. So you have to keep an essence or be a little bit anonymous in terms of the way that you're writing. It's only 4,000 characters or 47 lines. Now, sometimes when students hear that, one of the first thoughts that will go through their mind is, oh my God, how am I going to write 4,000 characters? How am I going to fill 47 lines? But when you actually think about the detail that you'll need to put in there, it's actually quite challenging to restrict it to 47 lines. because you need to try and put across to me the academic knowledge you have of your course, the academic content you've learned from either from your A-levels or your BTEC, some general academic skills you've learned whilst in your current education. And then you also need to try and talk to me a bit about your work experience and also your social experience by providing me examples and, where relevant, relating to your field. Now, trying to do all of that within 47 lines becomes very, very tricky. So one thing that, or one of the biggest tips that I will always recommend to students is remember relevancy. What is it that you're telling me? Is it the most relevant? So some students might refer back to year 9, some students might refer back to year 10, but they've done some very interesting stuff in year 12 or year 13 or the first year or second year, depending on whether you're going to college. So always start with the most relevant stuff first and really explain the skills that you have through examples. So it's no good you clumping 4 or 5 skills together in one sentence and having one massive sentence without really showing to us and demonstrating to us why those skills are going to be useful either within your field or to help support you whilst you're studying at university. So it's really important that you're very clever with the way that you write your work. Make sure your piece of work is a progressive piece of work, i.e. it reads forward. The last thing that we don't want to read is a section at the top around your education. We do a section in the middle about your work experience, then we go back to your education. Everything should come together in terms of your structure. There is no right or wrong way to structure. So you don't have to talk about your education first. You don't have to talk about your work experience second. It's entirely up to you. So you have got that room to be a bit more flexible with the way that you work, but please make sure that you do write in a structure and you keep all your ideas together. So we want to know why you want to study that course. What is it around that course that makes you think, you know what, I want to spend or commit the next 3 years of my life to studying and learning about that course in a bit more detail? And the personal statement is one thing that we use to make a decision on your application. And in my opinion, I don't know if the others will agree, I think it's the most integral part. So this whole application process that you're filling out, sometimes the crux of the whole thing comes down to the personal statement and how well you've put across the knowledge that you have and the skills that you have and how you can transfer those across to university.
It was very insightful, Dal. You're off there.
I felt like I spoke far too much. So I was just like,
no, great.
I need
great
to stop
tip.
here.
No, absolutely fantastic. And I think if anyone's still struggling, I think the best thing is probably to start maybe writing a mind map out. And if you've got lots of things to say, is kind of start thinking, well, is this important? And does this really reflect why I have the skills? Does it really affect why I'm really interested in this role? I think I've been looking at a lot of personal statements recently. And if you say, okay, well, I've done this wider reading as part of this subject, and, you know, I've read this book, is actually saying, well, what kind of influence has it had on you? What kind of impact has it had on you? Instead of just saying, well, I've read a book about the subject
or
area.
what you took from the book as well. So if you are using academic context or if you want to quote something that you've read previously, it's not good enough that you're just saying the title or the author. What have you taken away and how is it built to your library of knowledge, shall we say?
Mm-hmm.
Just picking that one out because I've seen it already this year, and it's good to know a bit more as to how something has had an impact on yourself, really. Ben, have you got any thoughts that, you know, tips or anything you want to add on personal statements?
Another one that gets picked up quite a lot is students tend to not put certain work experience down. I think that's something that, you know, Dow touched on a little bit there, is making sure it's sort of relevant. But sometimes, you know, it's quite difficult to get maybe massively relevant work experience. So you've got to take a step back and think about sort of wider transferable skills and sort of adapt those into the statement as well. So, you know, even if you've got this sort of rubbish retail job, from that you are developing communication skills, which typically you wouldn't maybe have evidence of such communication skills in other areas, and you know, 90% of jobs are going to require some form of communication or some sort of interpersonal communication in some capacity. So being able to kind of demonstrate that from some, even just a commitment to a part-time job, it only needs to be one sentence or a couple of sentences, but it's just an additional thing that you can pop in there if you've got space, I think. And obviously you work your way closer and closer to those more relevant skills. And obviously this year's been particularly difficult for it, but something we've always said is try and get work experience, try and get volunteering work, try and just go and do some shadow work or some experience that ties into things you're interested in, because not only does it benefit your application, but it makes it really sure that this is actually what you want to do. You know, it's all well and good learning about it in a classroom, but if you've never actually experienced what the job is all about, you could get to university and go, oh, okay, this isn't for me. So, you know, things like that can benefit not just the personal statement, but actually just generally help you with what your next steps are going to be. So, yeah, all of those things I think are brilliant. And as I say, Dal wrapped up personal statements really quite nicely there.
Just touching on that. Sorry, Faye. Just touching on what Ben's saying in terms of work experience. This year as well, I was working with some students that didn't actually have any work experience, obviously, because of everything that happened with COVID. Was meant to do their work experience in the summer, so that's where it usually takes place for students who usually do it in the summer of their first year, transitioning into their second year. But with COVID happening, a lot of students might be in a position where they didn't actually get the opportunity to go and do it. And one of my biggest pieces of advice was that your skills that you would have learned from your work experience is not exclusive to your work experience. So there isn't a set of skills that you would have learned just from work experience. So what my point was, or one thing that I really want to try and stress, so if there's any students that are watching that haven't managed to secure any work experience this year, you're not at a disadvantage, because there's a lot of things that have happened this year in terms of digital. So there's a lot of digital transitions, a lot of companies have started putting on webinars, a lot of universities have been putting on live streams like this to try and help students and try and upskill them and also expand their knowledge and also develop their skill set. So it's all about using COVID as not as a barrier or when to do work experience, but the pandemic hit. But I showed my ability to be proactive, or I demonstrated my initiative by utilizing the pandemic to upskill myself in other areas. So really have a look at the things that you did within your social time. Is there something that you could be doing online to help develop those skills that you would have developed within work experience, or have you done it within an academic setting? Have you done it within high school? Have you done it within college or your sixth form or whatever you may be? So when you really take a little bit of a think around some of the skills that you would have developed in employability, you probably find that you could have developed it already either in academia or in regards to your social experience.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and something that actually Dal just touched upon is things like webinars that universities are offering, you know, kind of workshops, you know, all in addition to open days. So look, going along to that, you'll find out much more about the course, and then you'll feel like you can talk about it more because you know what it's all about, and what the course means to you, and everything like that. And if you are still looking at attending these kind of things, we do actually have some taking place. We had a computer science taster today, which I think you can still access. We have nursing application support taking place tomorrow. We have a game art session. You can still book onto this, you know, game art on Wednesday, and business and management session on Thursday. So we'll pop the link in the chat as well, if you are interested in attending any of these. And they are, most of them, in the afternoon or the early evening. So hopefully you can take part. Moving on, you've submitted your application to university. Hallelujah, you've got it done. You've made all those really, really important decisions. And I think I can still remember, even though it was a while ago, don't make any comments, Dal, that it was a massive weight off my shoulders. I mean, yes, you then start thinking, oh, who's going to give me an offer? And am I going to be successful in hearing and getting an offer from this and this university? But I think it is a massive weight off your shoulders, getting that personal statement and your application submitted. And then you'll start hearing back from universities, and some of them might get back to you quicker than others. So UCAS are going to email your application to universities on your behalf, and they'll start assessing your application. It might be that you're in a batch that they're currently looking at. It might be you're in the next batch to look at. So don't worry if you hear back from other universities first. or if some of your friends have heard back from the same university and you haven't. It's just that we're getting around to having a look at them. Universities generally do have until the end of March to get back to you. I think we're all quite competitive and trying to get back to you as quickly as possible these days. So you will hear back from us quite quickly. Some things that might happen is if it is required of yourself, once we receive your application and we look at it, if it applies, we may ask you to submit a portfolio and we'll tell you how to do that. Or we might ask you to attend an interview. And this year, you'll probably find that most, if not all, institutions are doing digital interviews. So they'll also tell you how to prepare for that and how to kind of access that online interview as well. Regardless of all of this, whether you're getting an interview or submitting a portfolio, your UCAS track will be updated to reflect what kind of decisions have been made. And Ben, can you tell us a little bit about the kind of offers that students might receive from universities?
Yeah. So we mentioned sort of up top that obviously these things will be updated on your UCAS track, and the typical offer that could pop up on there from a university is what's called a conditional offer. So that is essentially an offer made under the condition that you meet certain criteria. Typically that will be UCAS points. So if you're not aware of those, there's lots of information on the UCAS website about those, but different qualifications amount to a different number of points once you finish either a year of AS or 2 years of A levels or a BTEC, etc. So being able to work out what you need for certain courses is obviously really important when it comes to the research process, so that you can sort of predict what you're sort of looking to aim for when you actually make those applications. So it might be they're looking for a certain amount of UCAS points come results day for you to kind of accept that offer. It might be that there's a specific grade in a specific course, so those conditions might be slightly more granular, they might be slightly more specific. It might even come down to even GCSE results might be as part of that condition. So those are things just to factor in when you're looking at your sort of conditional offers, is to make sure that you meet those sorts of criteria. The conditional offer may also impacted by things like interviews, it might be impacted by sort of auditions or portfolios, but obviously they will be a lot more reactive, and you'll obviously have to submit those a lot earlier than the results day period. So you'll usually know whether you've received that conditional offer and whether you've accepted those parts of the application way before results day. So it's just something to bear in mind. As Faye said, obviously keep an eye on UCAS track, make sure that you know what stage your application is at, particularly if you are applying for those courses that do require interview, portfolios, auditions, and that sort of thing. The other thing that can come up, it's less common, but it's something called an unconditional offer. So an unconditional offer is typically for students that have either already got the grades they need to get onto the course, or in fact they actually exceed the grades primarily based on predicted grades, and you've got a very high achieving grade value anyway. So what they'll very often do is give you an unconditional offer, and essentially that means that you have already got your place secured at that university. So as I say, they're slightly more uncommon, but you might find that you get yourself an unconditional offer if you do exceed those expectations, or you have a really good personal statement based on some of Dow's feedback earlier. You can come across something called an alternative course offer. Again, these do not happen very often, but it might be that a university feels that you are a better fit for another course at that university. Something that happens quite a lot with us is students that apply for our video game art course sometimes get cross offered to something like animation or vice versa. As I say, it doesn't happen very often, and you are within your rights not to accept those changes, but obviously it's just something to be aware of on the application if they do offer you an alternative course. Obviously, the final one is that you are unsuccessful, and that can sometimes be due to, again, those more competitive courses looking for a very strong personal statement with certain criteria. It might be that, again, your predicted grades don't quite match what they're looking for on the application. Again, obviously, we hope that that doesn't happen to any of you, but it's just, again, that can come up on your UCAS track. So it's just something to be aware of when you're going through that process. And as we mentioned, obviously, at top when I was talking about the timeline, those offers will come from your when it comes down to your firm and insurance choices. So hopefully you hear back from all 5 of your universities. Hopefully you get 5 offers, 5 conditional offers perhaps from your 5 choices, and that's when you can then choose which is your firm, which, as I said, is the one that you really want to go to, and insurance, which is your backup. The other 3, regardless of what offer status they were at, will then be discarded on your application. So it's just worth bearing those in mind when you do start to narrow down what your final choices are going to be, because that can obviously impact where you go next. And as I mentioned before, you'll only be bumped down to your insurance if you don't meet the conditions of your firm. And equally, if you then don't meet the conditions of your insurance either, when it comes to results day, you'll be pushed into clearing, which I think we're going to touch on really, really quickly in just a few moments.
Yeah. So one thing that you can also have a look at is Ucas Extra. So before we get on to clearing and having a look at clearing, so Ucas Extra for students who are unsuccessful in all 5 of their choices. Now, hopefully you're not going to be one of those students, but if you do find yourself in this predicament, there is no reason to panic, because Ucas have designed something that will help you try and gain a place at university. Or you could be in a position where you've changed your mind about your course or the university that you want to go to. So you get the opportunity to have one extra choice, okay? And this opens at the end of February until July. But one of the caveats here is that only use this if you have used all 5 of your choices, and you cannot be holding any offers. So check with universities before adding a UCAS extra choice, just to make sure it's there and it's available. There's no additional cost. So if, I think it was Faye who was talking about the cost in the application. So if you've paid your £26 to make your 5 choices, then utilising UCAS Extra is free of charge. You cannot change or make any amendments to your personal statement. So please do bear that in mind. And you can also utilise this to try and find out why you were unsuccessful. So it's not all doom and gloom. So you do get the opportunity to utilize UCAS Extra if you are unsuccessful on your 5 choices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I guess a bit of a lifeline there for anybody who doesn't get the offers that they want, or perhaps even has a complete change of heart about what they want to do, to kind of sum up what Dal said about UCAS Extra. And I think I have spoken to people who've gotten to that point before where they've made an application and thought, oh gosh, I did what I thought was a sensible choice, but it wasn't actually me following my heart. Really had a passion for something else. So yeah, it's good to get it right, I think, the first time, but not everybody does. So it's great that UCAS Extra is there and in place to have that kind of backup, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens after you've made your application, you've started getting offers, or then you've responded to offers, or maybe you've used UCAS Extra, is that you actually then wait for results day, which will be usually on a Thursday. I think it will be the 12th of August this next year. And that's when universities open for clearing.
Mm-hmm.
And clearing is something, it can be that it's just on the 12th of August for some universities. For some other universities, they start in June or July for clearing. And clearing is where lots of places are open, or places are reopened for students to have a look at, to see if they'd be interested in studying that course. And it's for people who maybe haven't ever made an application, or perhaps they don't get into their firm and insurance choices. So it can happen that people don't get into their chosen universities. So really, clearing is a good opportunity for you to either, call up, confirm your offer, or maybe change it. Perhaps you did better than you thought you were going to do. And there's another university that you actually had in the back of your mind, didn't think you would get a place. So you might want to change that university. So that's kind of how results day would work on the 12th of August. It's always good to consider your options. It's good to think, well, hang on, have I visited this place? What's the accommodation like if you're moving away from home? Has the university got lots of support in place to help me? If you're moving away from home, if you want to have a look at what we offer to students as the whole package, whether it's anything from your clubs and societies to your free classes. So thinking about your mind health, for example, we've got things like yoga sessions, meditation. We've got things like volunteering, lots of things that you can get involved in. So it's, yes, looking at the course, looking at the location, but looking at everything that the university offers you to be able to make a really, really good choice for you. And I think that really sums up UCAS in a nutshell. Was there anything, Dal, Ben, that I didn't miss, that I did miss even? My brain is not quite functioning tonight. I think that the closer we get to Christmas, the more I'm just kind of shutting down slightly.
Yeah, I think we have covered pretty much most of it. I guess it's just for students to think about. Again, that research is going to be really important. You know, once you've got your offers back, if you're going to move out, look at accommodation. Obviously, I mentioned student finance, so it doesn't kind of just go, oh, you've submitted it, oh, you've got an offer, and that's the end of the story. There's other things to think about. So just go and research the university. Make sure you find out what your sort of living options are if you're going to move away. And again, obviously, look at your financial situation.
Yeah, I think it's good to kind of revisit once you start getting your offers back. It's good to go and have a think and a revisit to these kind of options, and even have a look at further open days, whether that's digital or later on in person, depending on how the situation kind of plays out, is that you might want to revisit the kind of support they offer. Is it really the university for you? So anytime that you have any questions about universities, about the application process, anything you're not sure about, always call universities, or email them. They are there to help you, to support you in making the right choice. And you can do that Monday to Friday, 9 till 5. Get in touch with us, and we would be more than happy to help you with your application. Or just give you some general advice about the university itself. Something else that we also have as part of the university is a UniBuddy kind of system. So if you do want to chat to one of our students as well, you can go onto our website, you can find our UniBuddies. They are DMU students, and they are there to actually give you advice about the course, about being a student, and how to prepare for university life as well, because really, you're only about 9 months away from starting university. So it's a lot to kind of take on, and it's good to be as prepared as you possibly can be for starting next September, October time. So I think we'll conclude it there tonight. We've absolutely enjoyed the kind of whole series that we've put on these last few months. I think it is now, since September, since we started a new academic year. And we just want to say thank you for watching, and happy holidays as well. Hope you stay safe and take care.